Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Consulting Between Friends. I am your host, Michael Holmes Jr. We all need money to support ourselves. Money can be used in multiple ways to benefit us, such as buying us a car and a house to live in. We have called it all different names over time: Benjamins, bread, bucks, cheddar, bills, and dinero. A person or organization needs to have regulations regarding how to save money. In each state, a person is appointed to this office to manage the state's finances. Just like your bills need to be paid, the government has bills as well. If you don't pay your bills, something will go wrong. The way the state government keeps track of its finances is to elect a state treasurer. The state treasurer is responsible for the state's assets such as cash, savings, debt, and investments. Think of the state treasurer as a bank. This is the bank that is in charge of the state's finances for all the people. The state treasurer has guidelines and laws it has to follow to conduct what is needed for the state. The state treasurer works with different boards throughout the government with the governor's office. In this episode, I will interview a candidate who wants to be the next state treasurer for Louisiana. This candidate name is Dustin Granger. He will explain why the residents of Louisiana should consider voting for him for the state office. Also, he will explain what a state treasurer position entails. The topic is candidate for Louisiana treasurer, Dustin Granger. We will return after a message from our sponsor. Everyone is always planning things, and advertising is needed to make it happen. So, if it's personal or business, let Pinpoint Designs and Images solve that problem. With Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, you will receive quality work and professional service at a great price. The service that is offered: flyers, business cards, programs, invitations, photo books, ad booklets, and much more. Michael Holmes Jr., owner/principal designer of Pinpoint Designs and Images LLC, contact me by email or social media. Email address is pinpointdesignsandImages@gmail.com, and Instagram Pinpoint Designs, and Facebook Pinpoint Designs and Images. We are back. Before the interview begins, I want to give you a little background on Dustin Granger. Dustin is a candidate for Louisiana treasurer who currently lives in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Dustin was raised in Sulphur, Louisiana. After graduating from high school, he later attended Louisiana State University. Dustin is a small business owner who is a financial advisor with over 20 years of experience. Dustin is a proud father and husband with two wonderful children. Dustin has numerous endorsements from political figures as well as organizations. Some of the organizations are Democratic Party of Louisiana, United Rural Democrats, Alliance for Good Government, Independent Women's Organization of New Orleans, Forum for Equality PAC, Louisiana Federation of Teachers, Voters Organize to Educate, Step Up for Action. My guest today is Dustin Granger. Now, welcome to Consulting Between Friends podcast.
Pleasure to be here, Michael. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. It's in the campaign for Louisiana State Treasurer, and now that I made the runoff, I'm just working overtime. There's like less than 1 month to go, so it's kind of like a sprint. What I've been doing all year, it just kind of speeds up, and I have to work extra harder. So, but I feel good. I feel good. I feel a little bit of relief for some reason, even though I'm having to work harder. Just, I guess, knowing the end is near and we got a good team and we're just, things are going pretty well. So, yeah, I have to say good.
That's good. That's nice to hear. So did you enjoy your weekend?
I did. Yeah, it was, well, I spent yesterday, Saturday, going to New Orleans and at the Teamsters Union, which was pretty nice. Got to speak in front of them and then ate some lunch over there with them, and then went and met some of my team and made some phone calls, and then drove back home to Lake Charles, made some more phone calls on the way back. And it was a nice lazy Sunday. I didn't have to really do much today and worked a little in the afternoon and got to spend some time with my kids. So I think that's why I'm feeling good today, because I had a good weekend. How
Well, that's
about you,
good.
Michael?
I had a good weekend. I had a church event today. We had a church picnic, so I was volunteering over there at my church,
Nice.
and everything turned out really nice. And I had fun dancing around, mingling with my church members, and everything.
Cool.
Mhm.
It was a pretty day for that, I'm sure.
Yes, it was. Well, can you explain your background?
Yeah, would love to. Born and raised in Louisiana. I live in Lake Charles, Louisiana right now. I grew up in Sulphur, which is right outside Lake Charles. Went to Sulphur High, then went to LSU, got my business degree, and then I stayed in Baton Rouge for a couple years. And then moved back to Lake Charles in 2004 and started as a financial advisor, and been doing that since, right under 20 years. And that's been my career. And I kind of got that's kind of what got me into politics as well, and one of the reasons why I'm running for treasurer. But then I in 2008 got married to my wife Lauren, and starting in 2015 had my first girl Muriel Granger, and 2018 had my second girl Inez. And now, the last 5-6 years or so, just been kind of very involved in politics, and that kind of got me to where I am today.
Oh, I like your story. And I see that you was a financial advisor to start off with, and you realized since you was a financial advisor, you would be a perfect fit for the run for the seat, correct?
Yeah, I think it has to do with, I was raised, I'm a Democrat, and I was raised in a very Republican household. But in growing up in the 90s, we didn't really talk much about politics as far as with friends and everything. Whenever I got to college, I realized that I was a Democrat. And, as I got through college, started working and became a financial advisor. And I was really, more conservative on the economic side, but it all changed to me in about 2008 and 2009 during the financial crisis, the Great Recession, as people call it. And, there I was at 28 years old at that time, and I was still pretty green in the business. I'd only been doing it about 4 years. And then that happened. And, really was at a formative time in my life and my career, and what I learned about economics, told me that something like this shouldn't have happened, and just my whole world was kind of flipped upside down. Many of the people I work with, many working families and people older than me, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Many had never seen a situation like this. And here I was, a young guy responsible for their investments. And I made it through it. I learned as much as I could. I'm glad I went through it because it has helped me today. But at that time, I went on it like kind of a deep dive in why big downturns happen and big economic downturns, and how do we come out of them. And I noticed, as I read and studied, we've had many downturns in America's past and even further around the world. And we've had other depressions. And I realized, I started seeing these same patterns. And my whole view, and this kind of ties into a lot of my politics too. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm running for treasurer, is because I kind of look at politics through the eyes of economics in a way. And that's why this treasurer seat is a natural fit for me. And then, looking at Louisiana, these patterns became much clearer, and I can see like what is really wrong with this state. And it makes so much sense to me. And that led me to uh, want to run for office. I ran for state senate 2 years ago in a special election, came a little up short, but I'm glad I did because I got that experience in. And today, that's kind of like the heart of my campaign is like economics are wrong in the state and how we fix it.
Oh, I like how you explained that in general. Well, since you did went in depth what you was about to go ahead and say, that's going to lead into how we about to start this interview. So the first interview question I'm going to ask you is, what does a state treasurer do, and what do you believe you can offer the state of Louisiana?
Yeah, great question because most people really don't know what the state treasurer does. Some of it, and some of it, some of it can be a little confusing, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. Basically, the state treasurer um, does two or three main things. So first of all, the treasurer like manages the balance sheet of the state. So when I say balance sheet, there's on one side of the balance sheet there is assets or things that you own for whatever the
Mhm.
state owns, and on the other side of the balance sheet is what you owe. So what the state owes, um, and so they manage the balance sheet. Um, so on the asset side, they invest our money. Until we use it. As tax money comes in, we invest it. Some of it we invest for long term. Also, many of the state pensions and retirement programs for like state teachers and public school teachers and many other people that work uh, for the state. So we manage those. On the other side of the balance sheet, we managing the state's debt, which is really important. So many of the different projects and stuff that are in the budget for the state every year, all those projects get selected by the legislature, but then it goes to the bond commission for the bond commission to figure out how to when and where uh, to finance it. To borrow money against if we need to build a project. We kind of act as the state's bank in a way. And the bond commission is basically 14 people on the tie-breaking vote. But before it even goes up to a vote, it goes through the treasurer's office. I set the agenda and what actually we're going to build. And so that's kind of the balance sheet thing. The other thing that the treasurer does is advises the government on our economy. So in the state constitution, the treasurer is the economic fiduciary of the people in Louisiana. So uh, the treasurer is supposed to work on behalf of the people. They're not in behalf of the governor, or not on behalf of the legislature, but directly to the people because they're elected directly to the people. And fiduciary means that like they have to do what's in their best interest with
Mhm.
conflict free. They have to do it. So I advise the governor and the legislature on how to invest our money and what's wrong with our economics. One other thing too that most people realize that the treasurer does is unclaimed property too. So people,
Mm,
if you have a tax return that maybe you change your address and the state can't find you for whatever reason, it goes to unclaimed property. Or if you died and your estate wasn't settled and you didn't have a will or whatever, sometimes that property may go to unclaimed property of the state. There's like $1 billion that's sitting in there, and a lot of it's just kind of trapped. And it's the treasurer's job to get people that money. Sometimes it's kind of stuck there. So those are the main things the treasurer does, and it's not something that you hear a lot about. People don't always talk about treasurers, but they're pretty important sometimes, especially when it comes to like building things and uh,
mhm,
massive things that we can't do on our own or a single business can't do, because the state can issue tax-free bonds, and that's why they call it the bond commission. So if we need to build like the Superdome for some reason, that may cost $100 million or something huge like that maybe one company can't do. So what they do is they go to the state and ask to loan through the state, and the state
mhm.
can issue bonds to the public, so people can invest in bonds, buy them, and we pay them a certain interest rate for that loan. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of what I do in my daily business. I'm a financial advisor, and that's why I'm the best for this job, because it's literally like what I do. I advise, I invest, I manage debt. So and that's why. And to the second part of your question, what do you believe you can offer the state of Louisiana? My experience, for one thing. I've actually been a fiduciary for people. I am a certified financial planner, which is an extra designation of what I do in my business. So being a certified financial planner, we have higher ethical obligations, and we are a legal fiduciary for our clients. We must provide conflict-free advice. I'm the only one that actually does that. I'm probably the most qualified treasurer candidate we've ever had for Louisiana. So that experience, and also just experience of daily markets and seeing how the economic machine works around the world is very important. I also advise my clients. Um, the third thing is really, I think, vision for our future in Louisiana. I care about our future. I'm 43 years old. I have skin in the game, young kids, and I want this to be a better state. So I'm passionate about fixing these things, which I think separates myself from maybe a lot of people that want to get into office.
Mm. I like how you explain that. So basically, what I understand what a treasurer does basically is say for instance they have a project that the state wants to do, anything they're trying to build basically. So really, it goes through the treasurer to make sure that could be funded and properly done. Correct?
Correct.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah, which is really important, and kind of sets the priority too.
mhm,
The bond commission can reject projects too. So it's and on the bond commission, I'm the tie-breaking vote, but that 14-person commission, usually the governor has a couple designees. The Secretary of State sits on it. The Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, the Attorney General. So all of the big seats in government. Uh,
mhm.
Usually have a designee sitting on the bond commission, so everybody has a say in it.
Oh, that's
and
really
and when
good.
people yeah, and when people, funding municipalities. So if you have a small town that needs their sewerage fixed, or they need a new water plant or something like that, they have to put together their paperwork, show how they're going to pay for it, and bring it to the bond commission, and then we vote for it. Sometimes it can be rejected if they're trying to get money that they can't really pay for, can't afford. So you have to understand finances and ask those certain questions and make sure the paperwork is done to make sure that we don't do any bad loans.
Mhm. And that's really interesting. So basically, how you explaining what say treasurer does is it also coincides what you do already on your day job, which is a financial advisor, correct?
Correct.
Mhm. So I can see why you see this will be a perfect fit for you because you already do this on a regular basis and you have your foot in the game of it and you understand the process. And then also, since you're young, you see that you can have a big change on things, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I mentioned with like economics tying into my politics. Politics and a lot of it has to do with money and power. And money really is kind of where what drives a lot of things, bad things and good things are driven by money. So that's why I've always been fascinated with it. I feel like I uh, I understand how it really works. After just studying economics and geopolitics and how they intermingle this whole world economic machine, and that's how I help my clients. I help them invest for their long term, and I want to do the same for the state.
Oh, no, no, that's really important because this is really a big job, and I'm really understanding this my own self, really, because I really didn't know too much what they really do, but I did know it was very important, and I know it deal with money. So the way you explained it, I know my listeners will have a better understanding of what a state treasurer does, as well, like I do as well.
Great.
Since we are all dealing with economic issues, what will you do to keep the state growing?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest issues that we're at in Louisiana. And one of the main reasons I'm running is because our state hasn't grown very much. And I get sick and tired around election time because all the candidates say, hey, we're last in everything. Hire me, vote for me and I'll fix it. But then they never do anything about it. They always double down on the same bad ideas that got us here in the first place. And I mentioned earlier, that financial crisis had a big effect on me. It caused me to go into a deep dive and really see what's wrong with economies. And in Louisiana, what I notice is we're a classic trickle down economic state. And for those who don't understand what trickle down economics is, uh, it's really controlled a lot of our state government. And even in America, I would say over the last 50, 60 years, it's been getting worse and worse. Really started in the late 70s. Um, but it's kind of gotten very, very strong. And you see it a lot, especially in southern states, that trickle down economics really goes back even longer. But essentially, what it is giving all the benefits and the tax cuts and the regulation cuts and the money to the people, the very few people at the top, wealthiest individuals and big corporations, multinational corporations, give them most of the benefits. And the thought is like, oh, well, if they do that, we give them all the benefits. Well, they'll all the prosperity will just trickle down to the rest of us, and that's how we'll grow and prosperity, and they'll provide all the jobs and give us everything we need. But what we found is it just doesn't work, and we've known this for economists have known this forever, that it doesn't work. In Louisiana, where that's what we do. Most of the benefits go to these big corporations and industries, and the few wealthy landowners really run our government. They're all over. You'll see in the news most whatever big $100 million person funds certain elections and PACs and stuff like that, and gets people elected. And it's really just a few names of people that really run it, and that's one of the problems. Uh, and what happens is when you do trickle down economics, it leads to constant budget crunches, and these budget crunches happen, and then it goes to the legislature, and then they end up cutting what they call government, what I call me and you, uh, because they cut investments in people and health and education and access and infrastructure. And then when they can't cut anymore, then they raise taxes on not at the top. They never fill those holes at the top, people that don't pay anything. They always raise taxes on working people. And one of the most common ways they do that is through sales taxes. That affects working people the most compared to their income and their wealth. and it just happens in stages. I call it a vicious cycle because it's kind of like a constant downward ratchet down. And then whenever our economy does bad, they say, well, we got to cut more regulations and more taxes at the top. And then it starts the thing happening all over again. And people ask, how do they get away with this? Because Republicans and Democrats, nobody really agrees that trickle down economics is a good thing. But they get away with it, especially in the South, by using divisive politics, by using they pit working people against each other and distract them why they pick our pockets. And they do this through uh, race dog whistles, scapegoating the poor, woke crusades, all that as a big distraction uh, to get people to vote a certain way. And this leads to brain drain, it leads to poverty, um, all these things that is the result of trickle down economics and is what plagues our state. And we basically need to do the opposite of this. It's going to take a long time to undo, but you have to end those giveaways at the top, make them pay their fair share because um, there's so much corporate tax avoidance, and wealthiest people really don't pay much. In those giveaways, make them pay their fair share, and then cut taxes on working people. Lower the sales tax. Start that revenue that we get. Start investing in people so they can have the tools they need, uh, get out of poverty, and have good health. And we can have good educations. Invest in their communities, and people will stay if you invest in them. Infrastructure. People will stay, and they'll build more, they'll start businesses, they'll rebuild their communities, and that attracts businesses from out of state. That is more attractive to businesses out of state when they see a thriving community to go to.
Yeah, I can agree with that, basically, because since we're young, and a lot of people who are creating families, basically, is they do want to stay in the state because they like what it offers, basically. But like what the economic part is, the trickle down part is, that's why some people are like leaving, like moving like to Texas or different other state and so on like that. In like New Orleans, which I live in, and you live in Lake Charles, New Orleans is the biggest city for Louisiana, and it's mostly um, focused on tourism, which is really true. The state does need that, but they do need to focus on some other things that is much needed, and how technology is changing these different days and so on. And you have more technology type jobs. Do you agree?
Absolutely agree. And that's also a result of trickle down economics because when you give away to so much industries, they get more power. They kind of take over. Our legislature is kind of controlled by corporate lobbies. And whenever you're controlled by corporate lobbies, they don't really like new industries just coming in. So they put up barriers to entry for other businesses. And for instance, with energy, for instance, we uh, been a heavy fossil fuel state. It's helped us, I guess, to a degree, but
Mhm.
you see a lot of these big lobbyists and PACs and wealthy people, really pay politicians to uh, be mad about clean energy and talk bad about it, and they fight against a lot of these industries coming to the state, and yeah, we need to diversify our economy. We need to, again, even in Louisiana, we have so much poverty, and then poverty is really the root of crime too. So, you hear people talk about crime and things like that, and well, if you really care about fixing it, you have to fix a lot of these inequities in our system and invest in people and really try to tackle poverty and end it. And until we do that, things will never change.
Mhm. I do agree with that because since you did mention about poverty and so on like that, I was raised also in a small town as well. I was born in New Orleans, but raised in Natchitoches, Louisiana. And
Mm,
small town living basically is you are limited to like some type of jobs or things you can actually do, basically. And people do kind of know that, but they shouldn't have to really focus on that's a problem for them, but it actually is. And poverty can be one part of it as well, even though you live in a big city, correct?
absolutely. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, in small towns, we have to. People really, what I found in COVID, whenever people were able to work remotely more, there was lots of studies, and people were leaving some of the cities and stuff. And what we found is that a lot of younger people want to go back to their small towns, um, and if they could, but a lot of them, because of economic opportunity, they may not be able to. But as our economy is growing and changing, a lot of stuff you can do remotely.
Mhm.
But it's still hard to move to your small town unless there is, adequate services, like healthcare facilities, groceries, quality of life. Do they have
Mhm.
good quality downtowns? Do they have high speed broadband where that you can work in your business and stuff like that? So that's what I mean by like investing in our communities. Those kind of things, if you invest in those things, and it's not an expense. When I say invest, the other side, the Republicans like to always talk about government as just cost and expenses and spending, they call it. But it's not spending whenever you invest in communities, because you get a return on that. Um, you put money in and you get more money out later on when you have a thriving community and a thriving economy. And that's kind of the focus we need to change. Is like a change of perception we need in this state. And that's what I hope our campaign will do. And that's really what my kind of life's passion is. No matter what happens in this campaign, I'm always going to fight for that.
Hmm, that's nice to know. And I see you're a fighter, and that's what it takes, especially when you're in politics.
That's right. Yeah, politics is basically, well, I think the quote is, politics is war by other means. So yes, you got to fight for it. If you don't fight for it, you're not going to get it. And by fighting,
Mhm.
you inspire others. That's kind of what leadership is. Sometimes you have to scream, call things out, and stand up, and other people notice, and then people will say, "Yeah, that is right." And that's how you build a following and build a movement, and that's how change happens.
Mhm. Well, since you are running for this treasurer seat, since you've been on a campaign trail, what have you learned and what have you liked about being on a campaign trail as well?
Yeah, the hardest part is what's wrong with politics is money. Being on the in the state of Louisiana, Democrats are usually who fight for regular people. There's not a whole lot of money in that. When you're fighting against trickle down economics for the benefits of the big corporations and the people at the top, well, those are the people fighting against me. And a lot of politics runs on money. So statewide, I mean, we have millions of people. TV is expensive, so sometimes you know. My opponents usually have access to hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to be able to run ads and flood the airwaves and radio waves with all their ads. It's what we saw in the governor's election, and why Jeff Landry won so easily is because he literally spent like $10 million just flooding the airways, even on black radio, with his message over and over and over again. While you had people on our team, it's a struggle, so we have to spend more time calling people asking for money. We usually get small donations, and which takes much longer just to be able to get enough just to base to execute a basic strategy. So I worked real hard on that this year. I'm lucky enough where I built a business where I was able to step away part time, and uh, my team doing a lot of the work, and so I kind of worked part time, and then I was able to do call time, and it just really it's one of the suckiest things about politics, and what I think we need to change. But the good part is, once the campaign really kicked off around qualifying, which was like in August, then it started getting more fun because people are paying attention more, and you get to meet people around the
Yes.
state, and you get to give speeches and say certain things and see how the audience reacts. And hey, do people believe in your message? What do they? Maybe you can try different things, and you get new ideas. Kind of feed off that energy, and you talk to people, and you learn different things. That's what I really liked about campaigning. And So I made the runoff, and now it's kind of like we're in a short period of time, like a month, where I'm kind of now I'm back in my house on the phone again, trying to raise money again because we spent all our money in the primary, and then now we have to kind of raise it all again. At least in the runoff, there's very few people left, so you know, donors and people will pick up the phone more because they're paying attention more. So, and a little bit easier to raise money, but still much harder than probably my opponent. Uh, but that's kind of where I am right now, and hopefully in the next week or two, I'll be able uh, to to hit the campaign trail again around the state.
Hmm, that's really interesting. And I like how you explain the process that you went through to get where you are now, and you also inform people as well.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, because this is I want people to know these things. You know, we need good people running, and most people can't. You know, they got a job. You know, it's so much so time consuming with family. Also, it's a fight. Who wants to get in a fight and publicly and stuff? So, you know, a lot of these things I hope we fix. You know, there's a lot of talk around it around the nation of what we need to fix. I'm hoping in the coming decade or so we can really make these changes and change how our politics really is. You know, I think it should be much easier for people to run with
Mhm.
ideas and the passion, and it's really just a ceiling for too many people, and that's why we get the government that we have.
Yes, I can understand that. You and I are in our 40s. What will you do to help young people in the state?
I think you know, because I'm a exennial, so I'm a you know young um, Gen X, but most of my friends I think are more millennial. You know, I'm right on the cusp there, and yeah, I look at myself as kind of a leader for our young. There's not many millennials or young Gen Xers in power or government, and I look at as somebody that's trying to inspire our youth to rise up and fight for the change that we want. Um, I mentioned earlier the brain drain. You know, I've lost so many friends out of state uh, from younger and still leaving today because of economic issues, because of our backward politics. You know, we're considered a very extreme right wing state that doesn't really care about the liberties of women and LGBTQ people and you know racial inequalities that seem to always get flared up and people want to leave. You know, so
Mhm.
all that ties into helping our young. I'm all about the future. Um, I'm ready to fight back against all these things that people don't like. And I dream of a town that we could all love and live in, and thriving communities with diverse businesses. And I want Louisiana to lead the world on some things, you know, on climate issues and energy, you know, new energy
Mhm.
um, types. Like, you know, we've been an energy state for a long time, fossil fuel state, but we should be a leader in the energy future too, because
Mhm.
our state is right on the cusp of that big change in energy that's happening. And we're the most negatively affected state by climate change. And both of those are connected. So I would like to see us flip the script and, and you know, and climate protection too, kind of like the Dutch do with flood protection. Like, I would like a lot of that new knowledge that the rest of the world uses to come from here, and we need our young people to stay here and figure this out.
That is true. I can agree with that. And then really, climate is important to us for Louisiana because you go with the different hurricanes, how things are changing, the weather is changing. It's becoming a really big factor now in throughout the United States. But of us living in Louisiana with floods and tornadoes and stuff like that, basically on a more, we need to start focusing on that. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of ties to your question. I think one of the biggest uh, issues that young people worry about is climate change. You know, I have two little girls, 8 and 5 years old, and when you see those climate change projections about our future, I mean, that's when my girls are going to be living and raising their children. and my grandchildren, So I think that's why we think about it. We care more about it because it's going to be affecting us for a long time and our children and grandchildren. Um, so here we are at ground zero in America. Louisiana is the most affected change, hurricanes, all that. You know, why not? It's a perfect situation for us to be one of the leaders out of it.
I can agree with that, especially since we do go through hurricane season every year,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, what hurricane season is, some people don't realize it. When a hurricane actually go through the area, like New Orleans or throughout the state, basically, in Florida as well, whatever that land was there previously, over time, it start evaporating.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that ties into energy too. A lot of our coastal wetlands have been shredded up with pipelines and drilling and stuff like that. And as salt water seeps in slowly, I mean, look at the Mississippi River with salt water
Mhm.
creeping up. You see that destroys a lot of the ecology of the wetlands, and then the grasslands that hold the land together. And when that disappears and that dies off, well, when a hurricane comes, it washes it all away. So all these things tie into each other.
I can agree with that. And that cause people have different decisions of where they would like to live, and their future, and so on.
Yes, that's when I talk to people that are considering leaving. They're like, "Where I want to go somewhere where I don't have hurricanes, or I don't have to worry about some of the things that we worry about in Louisiana."
Mhm. Yes. What are some of your main concerns for the state of Louisiana, and how will you work with the new governor if elected for the treasurer?
Yeah, I mentioned already trickle down economics. Sometimes I call it Jindalnomics because it's sped up with Bobby Jindal, and that's
Mhm.
where we are today. Most of our legislators are right on that bandwagon because they're wanting to like get rid of the state income tax. And what that means is if they do that, it will blow a giant hole in our budget. It will be a bigger tax cut for the wealthiest. Um, and they'll have to raise money or revenue. They'll probably end up raising sales taxes and take away your people's homestead exemption. Uh, so a big tax raise on the working people and poor. And then climate change. We already talked about that. Energy changes. Um, Another thing that I didn't mention: insurance crisis, which ties into climate as well. I think that's where we are right now. That's one of the biggest issues we have, and again, is making people move from the state. And um, most of the electeds and politicians are doubling down on the bad ideas. So that would be one of the first things that I would want to tackle as treasurer to bring some sanity to the conversation because they're talking about giving more regulation cuts to insurance companies. In other words, that means hurting the people's ability to be made whole. Uh, I think we need a state solution for that. I am insurance licensed, so I understand insurance, and I think we need a state-run reinsurance program. I won't get into the specifics, but we use the size and scale of the state to purchase reinsurance, and then uh, uh, sell that on a negotiated basis to lower prices. Um, to sell that to insurance companies. There's ways we can do it, but it takes the state. And when you have a party like the Republicans that are opposed to anything to do with the state or the government, they think the free market will just fix everything. That's another law of trickle down economics. And yeah, things are going to get worse unless I can at least get my foot in the door to fight back against it. And how would I work with the new governor? Yeah, I would love to work on a a basis where we can agree on things. But unfortunately, I'll probably end up uh, doing more work to try to hold the new governor and legislature to account. Um, hold because uh, the government looks to be moving even more extreme, and a lot of the moderate candidates across the state, even moderate Republican candidates, got pushed out. replaced by extreme candidates. Our new governor looks to be very extreme, focusing on culture war issues and race dog whistles, like I mentioned earlier. So unfortunately, it looks like uh, I may be at odds with our governor more. I hate to even say that because we need to work together as a state, but I do need to stand up for the people as a fiduciary and fight for things um, that will improve our economy, improve our well-being of our people. And I would hold them up to account by really have a communication program with the people of the state. Writing to the papers often, taking my case directly to the people um, is what I would like to do. So, it isn't necessarily butting heads with the governor. It would be me pleading my case and uh, trying it in the public to get people more involved in their government.
Hmm, that's really interesting. And I like how you have some take on things that you would like to actually try to accomplish as well, even though it will be tough, but you're willing to fight for it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to go in there, and be a yes man, um, you know, and be, just happy in the office. I think if you run for office, you need to fight for your principles because people are relying on you. And so I would definitely try my best to make the changes needed.
I can agree with that. Well, since I did hear you say something about insurance, one of the questions I'm thinking about right now in my head is one of my coworkers I heard talking about she had to find some new insurance for a house, basically, because how prices are going up. So, does the treasurer also can help with situations like that in the future?
So that's more of a lot of the insurance issues go to the insurance commissioner or the legislature. But the treasurer does play a part in it because, and for some of the solutions that we're going to need, some of the state solutions that would go through the treasurer's office in the bond commission, like we talked about, to raise money and finance
Mhm.
things that need to be fixed. But a lot of those laws are written at the state legislature. But what I would do as a treasurer, I would lobby. I would try to work with some legislators to draft bills that address this head on and really lobby for those bills to move forward. Because, yeah, people are losing their insurance. We have a state run called Citizens Insurance. That's the insurance of last resort if you can't find anyone else. But the problem with that is it's made to be 10% higher than as a cost, 10% higher than all the other insurance on the market. So if you get dropped from your insurance, and you can't find anything new, and you have to go to Citizens Insurance, it's going to be the most expensive plan. I think
Mhm.
that's not right. I think we need to be able to make sure Citizens Insurance can actually be competitive with the
Mhm.
others and really um, work to drive down prices, not to drive prices up.
Mhm. Yeah, I can agree with that as well. I see you currently a financial advisor. What will you do to educate more people on the importance of financial literacy?
Yeah, financial literacy is real important. That's most people don't understand basics. I didn't even learn a lot of basics in economics and investments until even after college. I learned some in college, but I mean, um, you know, these are some things that people really need to know in high school and even younger. Basics of budgeting and investing and things like that, and planning for their future. So I know the current treasurer, I think, pushed a bill that brought some financial literacy subject in schools. I would do things like that, and also I would like to have like a yearly road show around the state to promote financial literacy. Um, Also, I would write about it a lot. I had a podcast too for 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
A couple years ago, we stopped it around uh, COVID. I think we ended up stopping it, but we did it for 2 or 3 years. I mean, it was a weekly podcast, and we had it going for over 2 years, going over just You know, 30 between 30 and 45 minutes just going over some basics. And that's the kind of stuff I love. And I think the treasurer should promote, especially in a state that has one of the highest poverty rates in the nation.
I can agree with that because financial literacy is really important, and more people understand how the value of the dollar is and understand how money is. Things will be a little bit better for the average person.
Yeah, I mean, everything really comes, it's the fuel of people's life in different ways, unfortunately. So, yeah, understanding how it works is, I think, should be basics.
Mhm. Well, we're coming close to the end of this interview, really. So one thing is, I remember you saying you're a Democrat and you were also raised in a Republican household. So when did you started realizing that you were different from your parents in general? Because you do know, like some people they stay according to what they were raised in, or it just sometimes happen, or they will be split. But when did you started realizing that, if you don't mind explaining?
Yeah, I love that you asked that because, yeah, as soon as we started talking about politics with friends, I remember one time I debated some of my friends that just came up, I think around 1998 or so, because I was a senior. And I remember them arguing like for the Democratic side, and I was arguing as a Republican. I forgot what it was about, but then I realized almost immediately, or maybe that night, or whatever, that I didn't believe anything I was saying. Um, I really had a hard time, and it just had an effect on me. And then I just thought about it. I was like, "Why? That doesn't make sense," because they would challenge me, and I'd be like, "Yeah, you're right. Um, I um, I do agree with you." So I think through debate, and even through college, I love debate so much that I even started my own debate club with friends in
Hmm.
2013. We called it the Junto of Lake Charles. And I love biographies, and I read about, I think Benjamin Franklin had a debate group that he met with um, friends and people in the town. They would meet in a pub every Friday night and talk about economics and politics and business and the community, religion, philosophy, um, and they would have beer and debate. And they called this the Junto. And actually, the first volunteer fire department that we've ever had in the United States actually came from the debate in the Junto. So some other cool things happened too. And I said, I want to start a debate group because a lot of us men that we married or and don't really get to have debate as much as we did back in college. So this was a time that we set aside to kind of get together, kind of like a brotherhood, and talk about things that we're dealing with, talk about politics. We would argue, things like that. And I would say I've changed my mind a lot of times in the Gento, and things that I had like hard positions on that I've softened. Uh, can't think of an exact thing, but there's Republicans, there's Democrats in there, and we have some very spirited debate. And sometimes it can
Hmm.
turn angry, but that's just part of it. That's the therapy of debate.
Yes, that's true. I do like debates, and I'm also into biographies as well. I do like a good debate. I like roundtable discussions, and
Yeah.
it sounds like that's also what you were into as well. And so you started realizing, even though my parents may be this way, don't mean I have to be this way. Plus, also you was in a lot of discussions, so it had your mind thinking a whole lot. Correct?
Yeah, I would. Well, I guess one of my favorite pastimes is arguing with my dad. We're so much alike. He was raised differently than me. He's one of those pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of guys. He was raised in very very poor. And you know uh, left him. Went into the army for 7 years before he went to college. During Vietnam, and kind of brought, made something of himself. Um,
Hmm.
and he was very proud of that. And I think that's kind of what his upbringing kind of led to him being how he is, and my upbringing kind of did too. And I realized that we disagreed on stuff. Sometimes father and son butt heads sometimes, and uh,
Mhm.
we've debated for, I mean, literally decades now. We still do, but he's very supportive of me, and very
Mhm.
proud of me doing this. But he um he still likes to debate with me every now and then.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. That's also good to know that your parents um, do find you glad that you actually consider something like this because this is really a big thing to really do, really, because you'll really be in charge of the treasury for Louisiana. Um, in me interviewing you today, I realized you are the person for the job, and also you realize that you can actually do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to tell my side of it and what I want to do, and I just I hope everybody can listen to what I have to say. That's one of the
Mhm.
hardest parts is, uh, and that's where the money comes in place. And this is great because I love talking about it, and you're giving me a platform for listeners to hear. You know, Otherwise, it's a short amount of time in politics to drive a campaign, and the only other way to get your message in front of people is with money.
Mhm.
So I wish more people can hear the message, because I think a lot of people, would come on board with us. Because people do want these changes.
I can't agree with that as well. Well, we came down to the end of this interview. Here's the last question. What motivates you to achieve any of your goals in life?
I would say in life, I would say people. Um, that's kind of what, and this is this is where I am right now. Um, my life is always, family. Um, and I'm married and have kids now, so that's a huge motivation. I think that motivates me in politics too, because now that I had children, that kind of coincided with me actually getting involved in politics. I saw big changes happen with in 2016 and 2020, and all the hurricanes that hit us, and seeing our community destroyed and people being abandoned, driving around the state, seeing the high level of poverty in the state, understanding the racial history of the state and of our nation. All of those things kind of, I'm a very empathetic person, and I want things to not stay the same. I want people to do better. I want my children to do better.
Mhm.
I want them to have a state that they love and a state that accepts them. I don't want them to move away. So I would say I love my friends. I have a very diverse group of friends. My wife always kind of makes fun of me because I have such a, a very diverse group of friends. You know what I mean? It's
Uh-huh.
almost comical, because I can get along with anybody.
Mhm.
So that's, I think, I've thought about too, like, uh, what I've read books, philosophy, biographies, and um, always, I would say a motivation too is like not wanting to live with regret. Uh, I want to reach my old age or my deathbed and think like I gave it all. I tried to make things better. That I can tell my kids I did. I think that really is uh, a big motivator in my life.
Mhm. That is a lot of motivation that you have in your mind, and that's a really good thing. Because motivation is key for accomplishing things.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's brings me on this journey of life. I think it's good to have a mission. Um,
Mhm.
I think there's a really good book called that I read recently called "Hero on a Mission" by Donald Miller. Donald Miller, he's a good business coach and stuff too, and he has some good business books. But he talked about uh, the story of life. How you're the kind of the hero of your own story, and You have challenges, and if you think about having a mission, uh, something that you're going for throughout life and the journey of life, that and you should look at these hard times as just a struggle and a story that you have to make through. That uh, uh, to uh, to achieve the end goal. And I
Hmm.
think, and what he says in the book too is like, find your mission in life. That kind of drives you forward. It a lot of people feel lonely and depressed and stuff, and of course, religion too can play into it. But having a mission in life, things that you want to do and that take a long time and that are hard,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? That can give you rewards and other people rewards. Um, I think that's really um, what life's all about, that the mission.
I can agree with that, the mission. And to let you know, that's the last question for the interview. Before we go, can you let my listeners know your contact information and anything else that you would like them to know?
Yeah. So if you're listening, please go vote. If you're in Louisiana, please go vote early. The election day is November 18th. Uh, Vote Dustin Granger. You can find me on all the social at Granger for La. That's Granger, FORLA. Uh, I'm on all the Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that. I make videos and stuff. I'm always putting out content. My website is also grangerforlaw.com if you want to sign up to donate or volunteer for the campaign here at the end. And my email is dustin@grangerforlaw.com. So I'd be happy to hear from you. If you want to talk, we can set up a time. But I'm going to be out there. You'll hear a lot from me just by following me.
Well, I like how you just gave all your contact information. And once again, Dustin Granger, thank you for being a guest on Consulting Between Friends podcast.
I want to thank you, Michael. This was amazing. I love doing this. I love having the conversation, and it was a pleasure meeting you a couple weeks ago. And I appreciate you doing this and letting people hear these stories.
Yes,
And thank you
I enjoy.
thank you to the listeners too for tuning in.
Yes, I enjoy meeting you. I had a chance to meet you at a meet and greet, so I'm glad we had a time to have a discussion, and I'm glad you was able to be on my podcast as well.
Maybe I'll come do it again as treasurer one day.
Yes. After a short break, we will return. We are back. In closing, I hope this information was valuable to my listeners about the state treasurer. Their job is very important, and I hope you had a great time learning about what a state treasurer does for the people in their state. Dustin gave great examples of what being a state treasurer consists of and why it is important. I am glad I had the opportunity to interview candidate Dustin Granger and learn more about what is important to him in life. One last thing, remember to support local businesses. And owning money is like opening a treasure box. Be careful how you spend it. Thank you for listening to Consulting Between Friends. This podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. as well other platforms that are available. So like and subscribe. Need to contact us and leave us a comment? You can find us on Instagram at consulting the letter B friends. Once again, consulting B friends. An email address is consulting the letter B friends at gmail.com. Once again, consulting B friends at gmail.com. Consulting Between Friends now has a merch online store called Podcast Merch Headquarters. This is where you can buy merch to show your support for the podcast. Some items to choose from are t-shirts, tumblers, and hoodies, as well many other things I know you will appreciate. So take the time to review the items in the store. The link will be available in the podcast notes under Podcast Merch Headquarters. Consulting Between Friends appreciates the constant support. It means a lot. If you would like to support the podcast more, you can find me on Patreon at Consulting B Friends. Once again, at Consulting B Friends. The link will be in the description. Consulting Between Friends now has a way for listeners to share their feedback about the podcast. The listeners can now share their feedback on Discord. The link will be available in the podcast notes and on the podcast website. Thanks again for the support. If you have an extra minute, it would be greatly appreciated if you could answer a few questions regarding the quality of the podcast. The link will be in the description. Consulting Between Friends. Thanks to everyone for making this possible. The host, Michael Holmes Jr., the producer and content creator, Michael Holmes Jr., the artwork cover, Michael Holmes Jr., original music, a DJ named Slash, references, How Stuff Works, special guests, Dustin Granger, candidate for Louisiana Treasurer, content distributor, My Producer Podcasts.